From the Middle is a founding member of Odd Pods Media. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this episode number 225 of From the Middle. We are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America in the middle chapters of our lives with a point of view that's somewhere in the middle. And if you've never listened before or you forgot, we're a comedy, culture, entertainment, and interview style podcast, and we love talking about all the things going on in our lives with a comedic spin to help ourselves have a little giggle and a laugh. In this episode, we talk a little bit about Corey getting super old. We talk a little bit about some of the commercials and jingles that we remember growing up. Kids are weird, and there's something in this prime drink making them crazy. We talk a little bit about lunch etiquette and a certain situation you're going to want to check out. And then some of the stuff we're streaming on the back end. Go ahead and check it out.
Oh, for the love. Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it?
You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved. From the Middle after dark over here.
Endo, my man, I am digging that denim shirt, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Decided I'd go with the old 60s grease monkey look today.
You are rocking it.
That's right. Got the blue jeans to match it, and that's one half of the Canadian tuxedo, they say.
Please tell me you're wearing black or gray jeans and not blue jeans.
They're blue.
Okay.
They're blue jeans.
All right, you are doing that thing.
The two things that to complete it would be a denim jacket and then a wolf howling at the moon tie. And I'd have the Canadian tuxedo going.
You sure would. It is good to see you guys. I am reporting live from Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, dude, you look like you're on one of them late night shows.
Yeah. Here for work, literally worked at the office late, walked up the hill to my hotel and logged into this call. So I am still in work mode coming down from it. So you guys might have to kick this one off in true comedic and hilarious fashion.
So before we started recording, Dylan said something which was very interesting to me. He said, what you said, like, what was it? Yepper, Dr. Pepper? What was it? Say it again.
Yepper Pepper, Dr. Pepper.
Okay. Was that off the top of your head?
No.
Or have you heard that before?
Have
you heard that before?
Heard it before and said it many times.
Okay. See, it's one of those, like, it feels like it's one of those like old guy things that like you would hear an old guy say, and then now you're saying it because you heard like some old guy in a gas station say it sometime.
I mean, I don't remember where I heard it first, so there's a chance that old soul Dylan made it up at one point and then just kept saying it. I've been saying it for years. A long time.
I like it. I was wondering if there were any of those old soul, as you put it, sayings that like I always envisioned. There's like a particular guy in my head, like at a marathon gas station, who used to say all of these things. I know there's been other people who said them too, but like when I think of like Yepper Depper Dr. Pepper, I think of him saying it. And do you guys have any more of those sayings? One of my favorites that I use is when somebody says, "What's up? I'll stay a duck's ass when it's fishing."
Oh, similarly, what did our dad say? A chicken's butt when it eats.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's similar.
I've got some I can throw at you. You'll have to tell me if they're in the same category. So our grandfather says, when you say, "How are you doing?" he responds with, "If I were any better, I'd be twins."
Yeah, that's one of them. There's a lot of those ones. If I were any better, I'd be you.
Yeah.
I'm on this side of the grass.
A good friend and occasional listener, a friend of mine, Tom, would always give out the dish out the old better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. He did that one a lot. So typically when talking about something really good, like as if that was the only comparison to something really good was a poke in the eye with a sharp stick.
Yeah.
Busier than a man in a butt kicking contest.
Yeah, dog eat dog day and world, and I'm wearing milk bone underwear.
Never heard that one.
You ever heard that one?
Busier than a one-armed paper hanger. How are you?
Oh,
How are you? Finer than a frog's hair.
nice. This needs to be. I think we need to make an official list.
People used to say Dylan snored like a sick goat in a tin barn.
Every now and
I
then,
feel like I've just heard straight up train wreck a lot more than that, but that's fine. That the longer it goes, the less people listen, and so maybe they'll tune out.
I heard one recently that I told to my wife that made her go, "Ew." I think I might have. You can tell me if I use it on here or not. But I'm gonna poop so bad that if I bend over and sneezed, I could paint the side of a barn.
Oh boy. Well, on a tangential topic, do you guys, I mean, speaking of things that you heard growing up, do you ever have like little jingles from commercials from the 90s just like pop into your head, or these, I think they're called earwigs, like things that sort of just have stayed, your mind is like kept. So I think of one, I don't know, once every couple months as a kid, and I'm talking 8, 9, 10, I went to this thing called All-Star Camp. And I don't know if this was through a church or through the YMCA. It was a summer camp where you didn't spend the night. You went back to it every day and you would just play a different sport with the other attendees. So one day you were playing like 5-on-5 basketball, and then the next day you would play kickball. And then it was just a different sport every day for the week. And it was called All-Star Camp. Well, there were so many kids in this town, I believe it was the next town over, that they had to split us up and give us different colors. And each color came up with a team name and a little chant. And I still remember the chant from All-Star Camp. It was, I guess nobody's like us. We're the Blue Marlins from All-Star Camp. Always the winning, always the grinning, always the having fun. I guess nobody's like us. We're the Blue Mar. Yeah, and on and on and on. And that's something that pops into my head every 60 days or so. And it's one of those things that I'm like, if I never get that down, somebody in my life, in my lineage, my kids' kids will want to have heard that. So there you go. It's now down in episode 225 of From the Middle. How about you guys? Do you have little things like that?
Oh, mostly commercials. Certainly little jingles and things will pop up. In fact, sometimes we've discussed this before. I'm really bad at using YouTube well. You guys go down rabbit holes like it's your job. But every now and then I'll go on YouTube and search like popular 90s commercials, or like popular 90s Christmas commercials, just because I know there's certain ones that I'm like, I'm trying to like get something, remember the full, and then I'll go on there and try to find it. I can still remember the first time, all the lyrics to the first time Pepsi did the bottle cap points, and you collect points. And you could pick songs you wanted, and they would burn you a CD with different artists on it, which was like unheard of that you could do that. People weren't really doing that yet. Like at home, that became normal. And I still remember to all the lyrics to that little jingle that they had on their commercial.
You have to do it. I did the Blue Marlin.
Yeah, prove it, Dylan.
All right. So it was I don't remember if you Google or go on YouTube and just do Pepsi collect points CD commercial, it's probably on there. Why are you listening to this when you could drink a Pepsi and collect points, get a free CD, and listen to great artists like Faith Hill, Sugar Ray, and Busta Rhymes, Hootie and the Blowfish, 160 songs so you can customize your own mix. Everybody feel the joy of Pepsi nice and fizzy. You can listen to the stupid song or create your own CD. Hey, 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 hey.
Man,
it never goes away. It's just in there. Never gonna go away.
That is impressive, my friend. I thought we had you.
Nope.
And you
not a
just
chance.
Came through.
Not a chance.
Like you always do.
Never gonna go away till the end of time. maybe my daughter will memorize it, having never seen the commercial or won't even understand it because I sang it on this podcast.
Maybe.
Gorditas, flatbread cradles 3. Taste supreme today, then Santa Fe. Fiesta, we love thee. Gorditas, let's go eat one now.
Wow. Tootsie Roll, chocolatey chew. Tootsie Roll, I think I'm in love with you. Whatever it is, I think I see. Here comes a Tootsie Roll to me.
Nice.
Bravo.
I still can't. When I hear somebody say New York City and not New York, when they say New York City, I still think the El Paso commercial. And in my head, they just said New York City. Yep.
Every time.
There were also commercials that really sold me on what they were trying to portray. And a couple of those stand out. Ferrero Rocher, using the music that they did, I thought that those chocolates were as good as gold. Like, those seem like the most fancy thing. It's like dun 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 dun, and it was really like. And then the Grey Poupon. Do you remember the Grey Poupon commercial?
Oh yeah.
Where the guy was in the back of the limo, and he made it such a big deal about using or not sharing Grey Poupon or whatever. And I thought that must be like the fanciest thing you can put on food. And now it's probably at Aldi's, like in the dollar bin. But I didn't know that as a kid. And I thought, wow, this is fancy.
Mentos, like I've always wanted to just like keep a roll of Mentos in my car. I've talked about this before on the podcast. So that like if there's a situation in driving where somebody like felt like they had to get around me and then because sometimes that happens and then they pull up and they're in the lane next to you at a stoplight now and it's like, yeah, a lot of good that did you kind of thing. Like I want to be able to have that thing in Mentos and just flash it at them and give them a goofy smile.
Yeah. Gosh. Or the double mint commercials. Say no more, right? Like so many good double mint commercials. I was really blown away.
Oh, that's fun. Well, speaking of things that remind us that we're not young anymore, I did something the other day that once again proves that I'm aging. So when I'm out on the bike, I like to have a destination rather than just ride around. It feels like one is wasting gas and the other is going somewhere to see something.
Sure.
So I went to the next town over and went to a convenience store for some corn nuts. I've never had corn nuts and I wanted to try them. So I grabbed myself a bag of corn nuts and they had a table outside under like a little awning that is meant for the guys that work there to take a smoke break or passersby to sit and enjoy their corn nuts. So here I am just sitting outside of a convenience store having a snack in a very, very, very small town, watching the people come and go. And I had ridden by an antique store and I thought to myself, while I'm here in this little town, maybe I'll just pop on over to that antique store and see if they got anything good. Never in my life have I thought that going to an antique store sounded fun. Not once ever. And I live in a place that is surrounded by antique stores. Not just the big ones off the highway, but the ones in the dinky little towns that used to be a chiropractic office or druggist that have now been converted into an antique store. So I went into an antique store and I had a great time. I was there for over an hour. There was different little bays for different types of things, right? Like one was houseware, one was tools, and one was like old classic toys from the 80s. And like one was sports memorabilia and bobbleheads and cool stuff. And I was like having a great time. So Sherry and I
turning into a hipster mom.
Dude, I had so many feelings about this experience. So Sherry and I have this little rule that if her or I plan on spending over $25, we just have to text the other person and just like, hey, is this cool if I blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, hey, is it cool with you if I spend around $30 At an antique store. She's like, what are you buying at an antique store?
That you can't probably find at Goodwill.
Oh, dude, I would never thought. Anyway,
Oh, dude.
so I ended up with one of them's not an antique, but one of the I think it's consignment, right? So one of the vendors had just a huge basket of vinyl stickers that they had probably just purchased from online or something, but it was like Marvel stuff and Star Wars stuff and like modern things. So I got a bunch of those for the kids and myself. I got a avocado colored container for camping. I got a book for ideas. It's called Half-Assed Ideas, and it's just a journal, but I thought that was clever. It was made probably last year. It's not an antique, but it's made to look like an antique. And then I got a Funko Pop, another not antique, of Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back with Yoda on his back from the scene where he's training. So, but I was really close to buying some vintage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. I looked at some of the hand tools that I thought were pretty cool. Anyway, you guys into antiques? Are you old also?
By the way, that was a much nicer version of that story that I thought. I swore you were going to say you sat down out front of the gas station or carryout or whatever in like a plastic lawn chair, and with the warmth from the sun on you, tilted your head back and just dozed off, snoring and took a nap right in front of the convenience store. I thought for sure that's where that was going. I do, we're probably a little bit more biased towards liking that kind of thing because our family growing up frequented Amish country. So you found yourself constantly looking at a lot of flea markets and antique stores. And even if you didn't like it as a kid, you sort of at least always poked around until you found something you could sit and look at. And so I would say we're a little biased towards probably enjoying that more than most people. And also because we're not there to flip things, right? So like that's the whole Magnolia Market, whatever. Like they're only there to like stage houses and flip things, and that's not where we're there. So not that there's anything wrong with that, but very different purpose of going to an antique store if you're looking to use something for staging and flipping.
I saw a lot of road signs in the toy section. There was stuff that I didn't even necessarily want, but I knew people who may enjoy it. So I was like Googling the price of things to see, man, I bet I could turn around and like either give that as a gift or sell X item for like $10 more because they had it at such a reasonable price. Like old stuff, like He-Man stuff and Ghostbusters and like original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. Some Star Wars stuff. Anyway, Kendall, you an antiquer?
I'm not at all. I've been to antique shops. Never once has it been my idea to go into an antique shop. And I can't say as I've ever really enjoyed myself for my own interests at an antique shop. Although I might have enjoyed the company so as not to offend anybody.
Got it.
I do think of them in my brain. They're overpriced garage sales. Like I look around and it's like, yeah, there's some good stuff there, and but then I'm like, but it's surrounded by a bunch of junk. That's been my experience at antique stores. There's a whole lot of overpriced junk that clearly nobody's going to want. And it's probably been here since they opened. And then they have like a few good things that sell. And then some good things will come in and then those things will sell. But the reason why they're like so overpacked is because like every time the antique store owner buys a bunch of junk, they're trying to flip it all.
Yeah.
And so, which they can't flip all of it, but they're also kind of pack rat kind of people. I feel like there's overlap there. And so they don't get rid of any of it. And so their store just progressively, the aisleways get smaller and smaller and smaller, because it just exponentially
Yeah, 90%
garners more
of it
stuff that isn't going to sell.
doesn't get turned over. It just stays.
Yeah, it's literally stuff that should be at a garage sale or should be at Goodwill, but they're charging 5 times the price for it at their antique shop, which is why nobody's buying it.
Yeah,
So-
my beef with places like that too, and you might have noticed this, is that everyone, because of Antiques Roadshow and because of flipping on the internet, everyone thinks they are like charging retail prices now, even on like at thrift shops. And like, I feel like even some of the prices of stores that are supposed to be discount stores are like, that's just a normal price for things.
Sure.
You're an antique shop charging like what Target is charging for the same basket.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, to this part of your story is there has become a trend now, Corey, of you finding a place to sit and eat amongst a convenience store. Yes. I appreciate that. I mean, I enjoy walking into a convenience store as much as the next guy. I know that I have eaten many by myself meal out of a convenience store. I do it all the time. I've never sat anywhere near the convenience store that wasn't in my car to eat. And I admire you, my friend.
He's
the
a man
cool
of
guy.
the people.
The cool guy on the motorcycle
Nah,
who's
it was
eating at the
like-
picnic table that's meant for the employees on the side door of the convenience store. And
Yeah.
by golly, I like that.
It was the same little town I had to go to get the Hard Mountain Dew when it first came out. It's just this charming little town, Centerburg, if you know it.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 gas stations in the town, and I found the one with it's those diner chairs where the frame of the chair is metal, but it's got a really cushiony seat.
Yeah.
I just sat out there, and I was like, I'm just going to people watch in a town I've never hung out in. It was fun.
I love it. What'd you think of the corn nuts?
Very crunchy. I thought I was
Yeah.
like I was breaking my teeth, but I guess that's the appeal because it says something like extra crunchy. They taste like harder Fritos.
Yeah. I like corn nuts.
And
And it is a texture thing. Like there's nothing texture wise similar or like corn nuts.
very, very, very hard.
I
Like
can think
I
of.
just heard the crunching all through my skull of like, wow, this is
But it's like it's this weird mix of like it's very hard but doable. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
things that are very hard and not doable. Corn nuts are so hard that they make you think they're going to break your teeth, but then they don't.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
but the taste was that of Fritos. Like
Yeah.
it was good. Anyway, speaking of things that aren't old, there's this lane of TikTok and Instagram videos that I don't understand. And it's kids like 8, 9, 10. And they're dressed very hip hop urban. Sometimes they'll even have big, ridiculously oversized chains on, like the chains you would see college football players get when they make a good play and go get.
Mhm.
But they might even be hanging out next to a car that's obviously not theirs to make it look like it's their lifestyle. Like they're making it in the lane of like a hip hop video, but they're surrounded by these Prime drinks.
Oh gosh.
So Logan Paul apparently has an energy drink company that's supposedly healthy for you. 2 versions, one in a can like Red Bull, and then one in a Gatorade like plastic bottle that's meant to be healthier than a pure energy drink, more of a sport drink.
They have it's 2 different products. There's a sport drink and an energy drink. Yeah.
So the kids, these boys acting all hip hop and urban, lifting up the trunk of a car and it's just Prime sports drinks lined up.
yeah.
So then I Google the phrase, what's with young kids and Prime? And it's a whole, apparently elementary schools are having to ban Prime sports drink because they're using them like prison currency. And it's like this status symbol because it's on YouTube. And the kids are on YouTube watching the video. I feel like the kids are on the YouTubes watching the thing. And then they got the Logan Paul telling them. So Logan Paul is on YouTube telling kids to drink Prime, and kids are drinking Prime, but it's like not good for you. But it's like cool if you have it because then it's a stat. I don't understand.
Look, if it's not Prime, it's going to be Pokemon cards or something else. All right.
Exactly.
It's the newest thing that's popular, or it'll be some candy or some food or whatever. It doesn't matter.
But
But I have heard of Prime.
The kids,
I have heard of Prime. Yeah.
The kids, the comments, I'm sorry, in these videos will be like, how could you let your kid, and they just relax. They're clearly just having fun. Let the kid, it's like a whole, like hotly debated thing. The kids with their Prime and acting like they're all cool. I don't understand.
I've done taste tests, obviously, with my family, which have included the sports drink. I've never had the energy drink, but I'm not an energy drink person outside of like Red Bull once in a while, and it's really only Red Bull. But yeah, no, Prime is all over the place these days on YouTube, and it's not just the kids, it's not just Logan Paul, but they have a pretty good like in the background kind of marketing thing. There's this soccer guy over in England that my kids watch sometimes who does some trick shots and things, and he always has like a bottle of Prime in the background or whatever, just as a product placement. And so my kids therefore love Prime, and I buy it for them on occasion, not very often, special kinds of things. So like they started soccer this year, and so I got them each a bottle of the Prime flavor that they each like the most, and for their first soccer game, right?
Sure.
Did that for them, and stuff. But yeah, like among even the kids, the 8-9-year-olds playing soccer, you'll hear kids begging their mom, can I get a Prime? Mom, can I bring a Prime to soccer? Oh, I need a Prime right now. So it is like when we were kids, like that was like Gatorade was cool to have. It was cool to have a Gatorade instead of water. If you were playing a sport, but it wasn't on the same level as what Prime is. Like kids basically now they hate Gatorade, and Prime is, if you've ever, I take it neither of you have ever tried Prime, but it's a sports drink similar to Gatorade and Powerade. A very distinct difference. Gatorade and Powerade both have that like sodium water kind of consistency feel to them. You can tell that you're drinking something with salt in it. And Prime is not that. Prime is just like it tastes like an overly sweet juice drink is what it tastes like. So you can see the appeal, especially to kids. You give them something that tastes almost like a melted lollipop, and they're gonna love that flavor. And it's sweetened with like aspartame or something like that. So like it is, they don't call it diet or zero sugar because there isn't a regular version of it. It's like Fresca in that way. But yeah, they do have a sugar substitute going on.
Oh, I have to try some
of it.
And I'm not surprised that you know all the specs as a drink connoisseur. But listeners, more on the cultural phenomenon side, if you have further insights, if your kids are into Prime, do they have an underground like selling ring? Tell us more. We're very interested in hearing what's going on with kids and Prime. It's confusing and hilarious that schools have to ban it because they use it as prison currency.
I love it. We were selling like mechanical pencils when I was in school. We were like trading mechanical pencils,
slap bracelets, your treasure trolls, and your
pogs.
Pogs.
Pogs might as well have been a currency. I have to say, Kendall, have you tried this one? Have you tried the new?
Oh yeah.
This is if Mountain Dew made an Airhead flavor. I've decided.
I think didn't you have that a few weeks ago, Kendall?
Yeah, I brought that on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. This is basically Airhead. Do you think so?
Airhead? Yeah, I could buy that.
Yeah,
I could buy that
okay.
for sure. It was hard for me to put my finger on.
If you're not on the YouTubes, it's the 2023 Mountain Dew mystery flavor for Halloween called Voodoo, Mountain Dew Voodoo, that Kendall talked about a few weeks ago. And I'm pretty convinced my wife is a big Airheads person.
Yeah.
And she loves Airheads. And I told her to try it cold. I'm like, that's what, when you hand me the Airhead flavors you don't want, and I shove them all in my mouth with one hand,
Okay.
that's what it tastes like. This
Interesting.
that's
Okay.
that's exactly what I feel like.
My wife tagged Bomb Pop as the flavor, I think.
Bomb Pop.
Which I could see that
Bomb
too.
Pop.
Bomb Pop.
I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what word that is.
The red, white, and blue popsicles.
That's not registering.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I don't know what word is coming out with your mouth.
Bomb Pop.
Like
EOMB.
Bomb
Next
Pop.
word POP. One of those.
Bomb Pop. Yep.
Like
okay.
The single most popular popsicle in America.
I don't buy popsicles. Never heard of that. Never heard of Bomb Pops. My wife and I did that one time for about 5 minutes. Not joking. Yeah. She was saying bell tone, and I didn't know what that was. And so I kept saying, what word is coming out? She'd say bell tone. And I finally picked up the phrase that she was saying. She was saying, turn up your bell tone. Ironically, bell tone is a brand of hearing aid.
Yes.
So that's what we were doing for 5 minutes one day. Was going back
and turn up your bell tones specifically is like a relatively, I mean, it's a little outdated, but a relatively popular saying back in the day. Turn up your bell tones.
Never heard of the brand. Never heard the phrase.
That's the thing. I feel like you and me, I think, have this in common, that like it's so hard for people to know whether or not you're kidding, which is why like I'm thinking to myself, wait, at some point I was sure that you were joking, that you had never heard of Bomb Pop, because I feel like because the reaction is the same. And
I felt like that was like the Save a Lot version of Bibimbap, like some spin-off Korean food that I've never heard of. I didn't even know how to spell it. My brain is trying to visualize Bomb Pop, and I'm like BAMP. Is there like an AAP with like umlauts over it or something that I'm like like I don't even know what word's coming out. So no, that was no sarcasm. That was all real.
Awesome. That's great. All right.
Well, this feels like a great spot. Yep, great spot to take a little bit of a break and hear some words from some of our friends in Odd Pods Media Bomb Pop.
We interrupt this program to bring you a news blast.
Michael Jackson's ghost seen at a Yankees game.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, now with a shrimp in every bite.
Lil Uzi Vert's head diamond has been sold on the dark web.
Stories like this and more can be found at the Ever Trending Story, a podcast where we peruse the news and write a fun fictional story for you.
Find us wherever you download podcasts and follow us on the socials at Ever Trending Pod, and we are proud members of the Odd Pods Media Network.
All right, so anyone listener who stayed for the back half of this episode, you're in for a real treat as far as I'm concerned. This was a social situation shared with me. I did what we've talked about. I asked lots of follow-up questions. So feel free to ask me if you want to know. I hopefully will have an answer. And then I would love your reactions because I know how I reacted. So this is how the story was shared with me. Somebody I know invited, an acquaintance is the first word that they used. An acquaintance over to have lunch. They've done this a couple times where they've either gone out to have lunch, and now it's like it's moved to the point where, and they've gone to each other's houses a couple times. So it's evolved from let's go meet for lunch to I'll come to your house and bring lunch, or you come to my house. And they normally will make something at home and then take it to the other person's house if they're not going out to eat. So they'll like make a turkey sandwich and cut up an apple and take that to the other person's house or something. And the most recent visit, somebody came, one of these two people went to the other person's house and just had a box of macaroni and cheese in their hands.
Okay.
So now imagine someone that you are an acquaintance with, that you've hung out with maybe half a dozen times, as I'm told. And you only really get lunch. You don't hang out in any other capacity, really. You text a little bit. Just shows up at your house with a box of macaroni and cheese. And I had a question right there because this felt like an important distinction. Was this some kind of shells and cheddar macaroni and cheese that includes the ingredients that you need other than pot, water, and spoon? Or did they show up with like milk and butter on like a craft box? Is this a craft and they're holding milk and butter, or they don't have milk and butter? And the implication is, I'm now also using your ingredients, because that felt really important to me when I'm asking. This is not a shells and cheddar variant. This is like a craft. I'm going to need milk and butter, and they only had the box of mac and cheese. How do you feel? And do you feel taken advantage of in that situation with the implied, I'm using your milk and I'm using your butter to make this thing?
Well, one I can tell you as that the Bachelor Kindle has plenty of experience in craft box mac and cheese, and enough to say that you don't need milk nor butter. You're good with what's in the box plus water. That will work. So maybe this person was in that boat, or maybe they've never done boxed mac and cheese. So if that's all the information that I have, here's the answer. I would assume that they were not planning on using my milk and butter, because I think it would be crazy for them to show up without talking to me first, expecting to use my milk and butter. So I would be taken aback if that is true, that they need my milk and butter. But I think that's crazy to the point that I assume that they're not going to be using my milk and butter.
I asked the question. So did they say anything about using, like, needing? They were going to need ingredients. So I'm going to add that layer. And I was surprised at how many people do milk alternatives. Now, if it were me and I were in a bind, I'm throwing almond milk in my mac and cheese or in my whatever. But I would be surprised if other people don't care about that. Because what if you show up to a house where there's no cow milk? It's almond milk, it's soy milk, that does affect flavor. I mean,
sure,
that's a thing. They were expecting ingredients.
Yeah.
There was no check-in beforehand.
When these lunches are had, and you may have said it in your setup, and I may have missed it, do both friends make food and share, or do they only bring food for themselves and just eat together?
I didn't ask, but how they described the meals, like early on, it was like, oh, I'll make a sandwich with some slices of apples. I got the assumption that this wasn't shared. That this is just like I'll bring my own meal and you bring your own meal and we'll just meet up and eat.
I think this person just ran out the door and grabbed and was like, I don't have any, and I don't want to have them have to give me some lunch. So at least I'm just borrowing some of their ingredients and not asking them to have lunch for me.
Well, yeah. Another follow-up question I asked, because this was intriguing to me, that somebody would show up with like that's like showing up with like a living turkey saying, this is for Thanksgiving, you know? So I said, so what did you just immediately, do you immediately ask about milk and butter and knowing that they're going to need it? Because you can see, once you see it's not the shells and cheddar box is shaped differently. I know they're both rectangles, but we know the look of the box when you look at the box, and this rectangle that's thicker is this kind, and this one is thinner and taller. And we know when you need milk. So I said, did you immediately ask? They were thinking apparently and said, well, we happen to have some of the microwave bowl ones at our house. So I offered them one of those if they didn't want to have to cook, like the instant mac and cheese.
Right.
I offered them one of those if they didn't want to have to cook one while we were talking, which is what ended up happening, which I thought was a good call.
Yeah.
But would you immediately have to you have to offer ingredients right away, right?
I think the three of us, and probably most people listening, would have two simultaneous thoughts here.
Okay.
One is I think we, the three of us, are gracious enough that if we were to actually put ourselves in those shoes and this was actually happening to us in our home, we would be happy and gracious to let them use some milk and butter. Sure. Not a problem. It doesn't matter if it was the 6th or the 2nd or the first time. Yes, you can have some of my milk and butter to make your mac and cheese. It's perfectly fine. At the same time, we're probably also thinking, I can't believe somebody does this.
Right. At no point was my reaction like mad or you should have been mad. Just it's the same level of the first couple of times you watch Kramer burst into Jerry's apartment and get in his fridge when that show is new to you, and he like makes a whole sandwich and then walks out, and you're like, yeah, I just didn't know that was a thing that people did.
Yeah.
It's surprise. I wouldn't care. Somebody could come over and have whatever they want in my fridge and cabinets. I really genuinely wouldn't care, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know that I'd be thoughtful enough to offer butter and milk right away, because I'd be so surprised that you showed up with just a box of freaking crap.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like you'd be surprised that like somebody is actually doing this. It's kind of like there's a thing, we would not have a problem with it, and yet we would tell our kids to not do that. To do better.
I think the only thing that would have been more weird is if they had opened the box and they had already dumped cooked macaroni and cheese into a cardboard box and were eating it out of a cardboard box. I don't know. It was a fascinating coworker story, and I was asking all kinds of follow-up questions because I just thought it was super interesting.
When Sherry and I moved into our house 9 years ago, I asked a coworker that I didn't really know that well if he could come and help us move. Kind of a jerk move on my part, but we needed the help. And we had spent some time together, but not much. So this guy, very nice guy, very kind, a little different. After everything was moved in, and while we were waiting for like the pizzas that we were providing everyone who had helped us to show up, he fell asleep on our couch in the living room. And I was like, I'm kind of like, I feel good that he felt so comfortable that he could just sleep on our couch. I think I would feel similarly about this person with the macaroni and cheese box. It's like, that's so out there that you did that. Yet I somehow take it as a sign of your comfort level with me that you could do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, Corey, imagine in your mind hole where you think things. Imagine that I show up at your front door and I don't say a word and I just hold up a box, just a box, nothing else in either hand. And I just hold it up and go,
yeah.
And I just do the whatever gesture and just.
I think that's the face you have to make.
This is what I have. Also, the other thing that I thought of was like in that situation. Now, I never know anybody's financial situation, so I can't make an assumption. But it also seems like it would have been really easy to say, "Hey, just so you know, I'm having Jersey Mike's or Jimmy John's dropped off, here in a few minutes." And that would be if you didn't have time to make anything or get anything, you could always have a sandwich like delivered, because it's not like they're not obtrusive. You can have in the instructions, just leave at the front door. You don't have to knock. You don't have to ring a doorbell. So like make no noise, not bother anybody. They set your sandwich in a bag down and they leave. So you could always do that for what, $7 and have a sub dropped off at the door. I don't know.
There's one layer we're not talking about here. They're going to have to use a strainer. They're going to have to use a pot. So, at the very least, and a wooden spoon. At least 3 dishes are getting dirtied here. Who's doing those dishes? If you're that comfortable bringing a box with no other ingredients, you better be comfortable enough to do that person's dishes on your way out.
I think if you're cooking all of that, the dishes are assumed that you're washing, unless you're like, I mean, even then, even if it's just the pot and a spoon and you're eating it out of a pot, which is weird, but like you could say, do you have like a paper plate and a plastic fork or something to where you can just throw that away? But man, there's a lot of assumption going on there, and I love the story. So I'm glad we got to discuss it, because I
know exactly what would happen if that happened to my wife. She would take the box from the person so quickly that they wouldn't even have to acknowledge the fact that they didn't bring the other 2 ingredients. She would tell them to sit on the other side of our counter, and she would visit with them while she was making the food that they brought, so that they felt the minimum amount of weirdness and awkwardness about doing it. And almost like that was the expectation all along. She's like, I've got this for you. Don't worry about it. So how was your day? Like, she's just kind of gracious.
The right move. Or I like the offer of the instant mac. Like, do you want some, are you hungry? You can do an instant mac and take that back home and eat it later. I thought that the instant mac was a nice move. Was a nice gesture.
I agree.
Funny.
Both
anyways,
good options.
That's what I got. That was just a fun story I heard last week.
That is, I appreciate that. That is thought provoking.
You know, we love our social etiquette questions.
Yeah. What are you guys watching? Anything big?
So my kids, or not my kids. I watched the new Winnie the Pooh movie with my kids, the one that came out last year.
The horror movie.
The horror. Blood and Honey. So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Did either of you watch that? Did we get around to talking about that ever?
We talked about it when it was like, I think it was like pre-trailer, like in the making. I think a poster had been released, and we were like, isn't this crazy?
Yeah.
I think our buddies over at Super Media Bros covered that movie in there.
Okay. I knew that I'd heard about it like recently, relatively. But I also knew that it came out a year ago. Watched that, streamed that on the old Peacock. And oh man, it is campy and gory at the same time. I watched it with my wife, and I feel like in the horror movie genre, you have your like purist horror films, which are like made to repulse you. That's their goal. They're not necessarily there to jump scare you or anything else. They're the ones that like will show the knife going into the skin. They won't cut that away, and will show the gore and everything happening. They won't do any cutaways on purpose because they're trying to repulse you and make your stomach churn. There's purists in the horror movie world that think like that's a horror movie, and movies like Scream, the campy ones like that, are not horror films because they do cut it away for that stuff. This movie does both. It is a very campy, corny, cheesy, poorly acted, low budget film that also is doing the gory stuff. Not as much gory stuff as say like a Rob Zombie film, but there's still gory stuff that like it makes you watch. So have that in mind if you decide to go out there, or if you decide to watch the sequel, which comes out next year. And I have a thought. So I've read about, because I was curious, how were this obviously was not a Disney film that came out last year. How are they able to do that? And the answer is the original Winnie the Pooh book came out long enough ago that in 2022 was when it became public domain. That also explains why the Winnie the Pooh in the film was not allowed to be pantless with a red shirt because that adaptation of Winnie the Pooh came back along after that original book sometime. It also explains why there's other characters that couldn't be in the film. So the film has Eeyore, it has Winnie the Pooh, has Piglet, but it doesn't have Rabbit, doesn't have Tigger, doesn't have Owl, or no, maybe it does have Owl. I don't remember. If there was an Owl, he was a bit part. The next book that introduced Tigger came out 2 years later, which means it's public domain next year. The sequel for this film is planned to come out next year. And if they don't name it and Tigger 2 with the number 2, they have absolutely horrible writing.
Nice.
They need to introduce Tigger, and I think that's got to be their plan because of when it's coming out. And it has to be in Tigger, the number 2.
Number 2 with a little tail as the bottom part of the 2. Was Christopher Robin in the first one that you saw?
Yeah.
That's like the main crux.
He's like the one of the main characters is Christopher Robin. Yeah.
Are there jump scares?
There's a few jump scares, not as many as what most like campy movies would have. There are certainly moments where you're expecting a jump scare and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's more the thing now.
Yeah.
Places where you expect the jump scare, like the person opens the fridge.
Yeah.
And you know that when they shut the fridge door, something's going to be behind the door. That there wasn't something before.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't, but now it's just as bad because you had that anticipation the whole time.
Yeah. So maybe what I witnessed was the evolution of the jump scare, the anti-jump scare. But I enjoyed it. I wouldn't pay a bunch of money to go see it. I wouldn't get Peacock just to watch it. But if you already have Peacock and you like horror films, I would absolutely watch it. You'll have a good laugh and get creeped out at the same time.
Nice.
So that's that film. And then I have started and finished season 1 of Invasion on Apple TV Plus. So that's been good. I think very, very, very well acted, very well directed, and put together. Very dramatic. You're following multiple different individual stories that at times overlap, but it hasn't like all congealed into one big story. And so you're still following these individuals. I like the way that that's done. I like the way these stories have been written together.
What's the premise of that one? I don't know that one.
It's an alien film, aliens invading Earth.
Okay.
So it's these creepy little aliens that you don't see a whole lot of the aliens. So it's not all about, let's show you a bunch of slimy stuff. It's all about let's talk about the drama that's going on here with these aliens that are trying to kill everybody. So, yeah.
Dylan, I've only got one, so I'll go and then you can finish. It's just been on Netflix for a while, but the Murdaugh Murders, a Southern Scandal.
Yeah.
Whoa. Have either of you watched that?
I did watch that.
Man, I just, it's like any of those true crime things. You're just like, I cannot believe what goes on in the world. This is more than just, I can't believe what goes on in the world. This is like, I can't believe what happened multiple times.
Yeah.
In one family, the people that this family is connected to. Anyway, it's been out for a while. People know what it's about, but it's fascinating. It's worth a watch. I was just totally in a true crime mood one night with Sherry, and I was like, hey, let's check this one out. And we binged through it. It's just 2 seasons, 3 episodes each. It's very short and sweet. Not sweet. It's very short. It's very sad. It's very tragic. It's very crazy. But wow, what a fascinating story. I was bothered most by the fact that it's spelled Murdaugh, Murdaugh, and the entire time they called them the Murdochs with a hard CKS sound. So that was, they can say their name however they want. Dylan, what are you watching? You're muted.
I think you're muted there, buddy.
I didn't know I was muted.
Didn't want us to hear your
if you're on YouTube,
noises.
if you're on YouTube, geez,
YouTube,
ooh.
yeah.
I think it shows our
tube?
names now. My name right now is Throttled McDonald. That's a fun little reference to all fast food stuff that we talk about, but also Thrawn, the main villain of Ahsoka, in which the series that just finished was awesome. Even if you're not a huge fan of Rebels, you can do a recap of Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, and then go watch Ahsoka. And it's so good. I want somebody else to finish it so I can talk to him about it. Really good. Tons of cliffhangers at the end because they're certainly teeing up another season, or there's been talk about Dave Filoni merging like Book of Boba Fett, Mando, Ahsoka, and to like move they merging these characters and everything that we've seen. Anyways, Ahsoka season finale was great. Can't wait to watch more of that. Just started Loki season 2, which Loki is probably the most well received of all the Marvel TV shows, and it's certainly out there. But I think Tom Hiddleston is he's just really lovable, even though he's kind of a bad guy. Through the MCU, he's been around a long time, so his face is familiar and people love watching him. That first episode was fun. And then a couple shout outs for a few things you should watch. HBO just passed off Band of Brothers in the Pacific to Netflix. So you don't have to watch the Pacific because, frankly, it's nowhere near as good as Band of Brothers. But if you love Band of Brothers and you've never watched the Pacific, go watch the Pacific. And if you've never watched Band of Brothers, go freaking watch Band of Brothers. And my request to you is it's not really for your kids. So like older teenagers and up is who maybe mature older teenagers and up. But if you've never watched Band of Brothers, it's 10 episodes. Go freaking watch it. Do yourself a favor. Do it when you've got a large TV and a sound system or an iPad with really good headphones where you're not like trying to follow like dialogue and action on like a phone speaker. Like if you've got a home theater, you got a sound bar, you have a big TV, go do it in that room. It's literally one of my favorite TV projects ever of anything that's ever been done. And if you like Band of Brothers, a little bit of news, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, who did Band of Brothers and Pacific, are working on an Apple TV Plus series called Masters of the Air, which is also going to be World War II. And it's kind of like a mashup of Band of Brothers and Memphis Belle. It's going to follow a group of a bomber group in a flying fortress as they fight off German airplanes. Basically, that's going to be the mini series that's coming to Apple TV Plus next year. Literally, I'll subscribe to Apple TV Plus just to binge that series because Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks love doing World War II content, and they're ridiculously good at it. So go watch Band of Brothers. Pacific, if you really loved Band of Brothers, and then we can all wait for Masters of the Air on Apple TV next year, which I am super excited for. On top of that, I think that's it.
And you know what else you should be excited for, listeners and friends and middlers? Next week's episode, we have a very special guest. We're very excited about it. We haven't had a guest in a while. We've filled up a lot of episodes just talking amongst ourselves. This is going to be a fun one, and we know you'll enjoy it. So thanks for listening this week. Do tune in next week where we will have a special guest. And yeah, I see what you're doing there, Kendall. I see if you're on YouTube, Kendall's doing tricks. That's a little clue. All right, we're out. Artiest Man, fill your cart. Use promo code the middle at checkout. Get some great stuff. Bye.